You probably won't believe this, but for a lot of people, renting a place is better than buying a place these days. And even more unbelievable, in some major metro areas, rent prices are actually going down. I watched a very interesting GrahamStephan video the other day. He was invited onto Fox News to talk about how corporations are buying single-family homes and driving up the rent prices. You know, this big conspiracy theory that's not really true. Well, I guess his position didn't jive with their story, so they cut him out or they ran out of time. Whatever the reason, it's a pretty interesting story and he explains it in the video. I'll leave a link for it in the description area below. But in this video, he said something that really got my attention.
So the fact is, unless someone is planning to live in their home for the next 7 to 10 years, buying right now tends to be a losing proposition when you account for closing costs, maintenance, property taxes, insurance, and everything else that goes along with homeownership. If anything, this is one of the few times out there where it's a lot better short-term to be a renter than a buyer.
Now, there's a whole lot that goes into that, so when you're through this video, go over and watch that. It's pretty interesting. It's got a great channel over there. I watch it all the time. So I started researching what are the best major cities for renters these days, and I found a bunch of them that are seeing rent prices drop. And that's what we're looking at. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Atlanta, Georgia. The city of Atlanta has been somewhat of a relocation hotspot for around a decade. They're still growing, but since the 2020 census, they seem to have slowed down a bit. While the suburbs in the Atlanta metro area have picked up steam, places like College Park and Marietta. Now, the overall drop is 3% in Atlanta, but it breaks down like this. Studio apartments have dropped by 4%, down to an average of about $1,662 a month. One bedrooms have dropped 1%, down to $1,912 on average, and two bedrooms have dropped 3%, down to $2,487 on average. Number 9, Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona is still growing at a pretty good pace. That's what kind of makes it strange that their rent prices are going down. So you dig a little deeper and you find out why. They have a lot of construction going on. As more complexes are built, people have more options, which of course drives down rent costs. Also, like all the cities on this list, they're kind of in a correction phase after a big jump in rent prices during the pandemic. Now, overall, they're down about 3%, just like Atlanta, with studio apartments down about 2% to 1,122. One bedrooms are down about 3% to 1,274, and two bedrooms down 3% as well, 1,577 right now. Now, I will tell you other websites and organizations had higher and lower rates, but this seems to be out the middle. Number 8, Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is doing pretty good. It's not as popular as it was a couple years ago. It's still popular, but it's not that flood of humanity like it was a few years back. The annual completion of new apartment buildings is at a near record high right now in Austin. More options mean lower prices for the consumer. Studio apartments were big the last couple of years in Austin, and it kind of shows in which type of apartment lost the most. But in Austin, renters are still paying more than pre-pandemic times. But in second quarter 2023, overall rent prices had dropped 4% in Austin, Texas. Studio apartments actually dropped 9%. I saw one other report said they dropped about 14%. One bedrooms dropped 2%, and two bedrooms dropped 1%. Number 7, Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, there's a few different reasons Las Vegas rent prices are dropping. One of the main ones is the property values have dropped pretty good in the Las Vegas metro area. So a lot of people have, let's say, moved out of state, but since property values are so low and they can't really sell it for that much, they've just started renting. They become accidental landlords, which increases the rental supply. And the Las Vegas metro area is one of the biggest cities when it comes to work from home. So a lot of people that had to work in the Las Vegas metro area are now working from home, and some of them have moved to other parts of Nevada or whatever, and it's just kind of made a lot of vacancies. Overall, the Las Vegas metro area's rent prices have dropped 5%. Studios are down 1%, making them $875 second quarter 2023. One bedrooms are down 5%, bringing them down to $1,345. Two bedrooms are down 4%, bringing them down to $1,475. Number 6, Riverside, California. What's funny is I always forget Riverside exists. And I grew up in that part of the country. In my opinion, it's just a very forgettable town. Riverside has always been that place where people from Los Angeles and San Diego go to save some money on rent. Compared to most of the country, it's expensive, but compared to Southern California, it's pretty cheap. This is another one where I saw different studies that said it's actually gone up, but a lot of them said it's gone down. So more websites and organizations are saying that it's going down, so we're going with that. Overall, Riverside's rent prices have dropped 5.4%. A studio's down 4% to $1,550. A one-bedroom is down 6% to $1,850, and a two-bedroom is down 3% to $2,300. Like I said, that's expensive for most of the country, but for Southern California, it's somewhat reasonable. Number 5, Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte is really starting to grow on me. I'm really liking it. I'd looked a couple of years ago at some lakefront property just north of downtown Charlotte, but it never happened. A lot of people are moving to the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, and I think if you got the choice between Charlotte and Dallas-Fort Worth, I would choose Charlotte over that. A drop in the demand for rental units is the largest factor in the price being lower this year, and it's because a lot of people are moving to the suburbs of the Charlotte metro area. Now, the overall price drop is 6% in Charlotte. When you look at the main 3 rental types, studios are down 10%, putting them at $1,550. One bedrooms are down 2%, putting them at $1,520, and two bedrooms are down 2%, putting them at $1,800 a month. Now, one that we haven't really been talking about in this, but it's included in the overall, is 3-bedroom apartments. They're down 6% themselves. Every other city on this list, there's been like no change or maybe 1%. Number 4, Seattle, Washington. Honestly, if you've looked at the rent prices in Seattle over the last few years, you probably think there's nothing they can do but go down because it is expensive to live in the Seattle metro area. But thanks to a lot of tech companies that have actually encouraged and given incentives for their employees not to come into the office downtown and work from home or whatever, or get a place outside the city of Seattle, that's helped out a lot. Now, different organizations have their rent dropping between 5 and 12%. Most have it at about 9%. Studio apartments have dropped 15% down to $1,400 a month, which is incredible. One bedrooms have dropped 6% to $2,150, and two bedrooms have dropped 8% to $3,000. And honestly, if you're in Iowa right now going, someone's paying $3,000 for a 2-bedroom, I know it's shocking, but it happens on the West Coast and up in the New York area and things like that. It's rough. But even down in Florida, if you get down in the beach communities, their rent prices get pretty high. Number 3, Dallas, Texas. Rents were soaring due to an influx of new residents, driving the supply and demand balance way out of whack for a long time in Dallas. Builders have capitalized on this population growth, and the Dallas-Fort Worth area down in Irving and up in Plano, that whole area has built close to 100,000 apartment units. Of course, lowering the demand and lowering the price. What's really interesting is I think they didn't build enough studios because they're almost the same price as a 1-bedroom. Anyway, overall, Dallas has dropped 9%. Studio apartments have dropped 5%, putting them at $1,300 a month. 1-bedrooms have dropped 11%, putting them at $1,350. And 2-bedrooms have dropped 9%. There was about a 7% drop in 3-bedrooms. There's not many of them, but it's in there. Number 2, San Francisco, California. San Francisco's out-of-control prices and out-of-control homeless situation has finally started to affect the rent prices and home prices too. During the pandemic, rent prices dropped pretty drastically in the San Francisco Bay Area. People were flooding out of the city during the pandemic. I mean, at least the ones that could. Well, those dropped prices have kind of stuck around longer than they had hoped. At least longer than the landlords had hoped. What's incredible about San Francisco is all the nonsense that's going wrong in that city and all the problems that it has. It's still very expensive. Overall, San Francisco's rent prices have dropped by 11%. A studio's gone down 13% to $2,720. Yes, $2,720 for a studio apartment. If you're in Jackson, Mississippi, that's the mortgage payment on a 6-unit apartment building. A 1-bedroom has dropped 8% to $3,432. And a 2-bedrooms dropped 8% down to $4,500. I thought this part was interesting on this one. In San Francisco, home rentals, they've only dropped 1%, barely moved. Everything else is falling through the floor. They've barely moved. And some of the other ones are just unbelievable. Park benches have dropped 7%. San Francisco, I'm sure living in a dumpster behind a Long John Silver still cost you $2,000. All right, before we get to number 1, we have another channel called The Sweet Life for Briggs. There's a link for that down below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Sacramento, California. Strange thing about Sacramento, it is the capital of California, and more than a handful of people in my life have thought Los Angeles was the capital of California. California's had a few different capitals, San Jose, San Francisco, and Monterey, a couple others, but never Los Angeles. When they finally settled on Sacramento, Los Angeles was the boondocks. It was way out there, and it was just like a little small town. So it wasn't even in the running. Overall, Sacramento's rent prices have dropped 14%. The big 3 types of rentals, studios, are down 20%, putting them at $1,550. 1-bedrooms are down 7%, putting them at $1,855. And 2-bedrooms are down 10%, putting them at $2,000. Now, I gave you the 3 typical rentals for all of these. There are other ones, like I had said earlier. Houses, 3-bedroom apartments, 4-bedroom apartments. I didn't want to include all of those because it would start feeling like a math class. Nobody needs that. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other.